In this video, we complete step 17, multiple column simultaneous selection. So we are going to allow our users to be able to select multiple columns with a list whenever they're selecting rows and columns simultaneously. So again, this entire section right here, we're in this get item tuple, is whenever the user has attempted to select rows and columns simultaneously with this particular syntax. So they have their data frame df, they use the brackets, and within the brackets they're passing in two separate objects, a row selection and a column selection. Thus far, our row selection, we handle the case whenever a row selection is either an integer, right here, or a data frame, a one-column data frame that's a Boolean, or a list, or a slice. If it's not any of those, then we will not be able to handle it and we'll raise a type error. On the other hand, whenever the user has given us a column selection, we're only able to handle the cases right now whenever the column selection is either an integer or a string. So we're going to add the additional case such that if the user has given us a list, so we want to be able to process this. So far nothing's going to happen if the user has given us a list. So let's go ahead and make a specific case for this. So if call selection is indeed a list, what we want to do is allow users to give us either integers or strings within this list. Okay, so in the notes it says let's create an empty list called new column selection. So we'll just go ahead and do that, new call selection, and we'll make this equal a list. So the final value of new call selection will be a list of strings. We only want to turn any integer into a string. So we're going to iterate through each element of call selection and check if it is an integer. If it is, then we will go ahead and do the conversion and select the actual column name. So let's go ahead and do this. So for call selection, if call is an integer, then we'll go ahead and append to this the value of that. So we'll do self.columns. We'll get the string of that call. So if it's an integer, we will have to dig into the columns, find out that string name, and append it to new column selection. Otherwise, we're just going to take a shortcut here and just assume that our user has given us a string. So if they haven't, we're not going to handle the case. We're just going to assume that this is a string. So you might want to write a little note here, assuming call is a string. Okay, so now new call selection is a list, but our little for loop here that returns our actual data that's responsible for making the dictionary is using call selection. So let's go ahead and reassign call selection to equal this new call selection. So we basically transformed call selection by iterating through here, and that's what this is what this asks to do. So reassign call selection to it. Okay, so our original loop that we defined in in step 15 should still work. So it requires that call selection be a list of strings for it to work, and then row selection can be any of the four other types that we've already discussed. Okay, or actually row selection will end up either being a list, or a slice, or a Boolean array. Okay, so let's see if this works. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in the notebook itself. So let's go down here. So we have df. So now we're going to allow df to be, or allow column selection to be a list. So we could use like name and then height, and we can actually allow it to be integers here. So -1 just grabs the very last column name. So it looks like it works. The row selection here is a list. The column selection here is a list. They both seem to work. We can make this a slice, an empty slice. So this just selects all the rows. So everything's looking good. Let's go ahead and run the test. So we have PyTest over here, and then the test is called test list columns. And we passed the test. All right, fantastic. So all we did here was we handled the case whenever the user gave us a list for the column selection when doing simultaneous column selection, and we turned any integers into strings. And then we just assumed that the user was hopefully intelligent enough to give us the correct column names as strings for the other ones. You can do some type checking here, but I've decided against it for simplicity. Okay, so that completes step 17.